All right, guys, welcome back to the Canadian Economy and Estates podcast. If you're new here, we talk about everything to do with the Canadian economy and the Canadian real estate market. So please like and subscribe if you want to hear more of that. We also have some good news. Me and Brooke have talked things out. We are going to be recording every Wednesday. We're going to stay committed to it every single week, and we're going to post. And we also have a really nice lady who is going to help us with marketing and posting so we stay more consistent. So you guys will be getting all this free content consistently every single week. And yeah, we're really excited to make it happen and keep it going. I think obviously with us both running our own businesses, things can get kind of pushed to the back burner when you create something that you don't expect to kind of get a following on. But we're committed to it and we're excited for 2026.
Very excited for 2026. Hopefully things shift a little bit in the market. Because right now, I'm sure most of you know who are listening, our real estate market, just to talk about the real estate market specifically, it's the slowest that I've ever seen in my 10 years of being an agent. Even in talking with agents that have been licensed for 30, 40 years, it's also the slowest they've ever seen. So I am excited for 2026 and hopefully we do see a shift. But of course, we will follow things closely and update you as it changes.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I think this is the slowest it's been, but also I find that I'm still really consistent with getting people. I think that people like really value experience right now and time in the market and just, being and given advice on what to do during an offer. So I just did a deal in Oakville. Clients of mine bought a house and, people are always like, who's buying in this market? They're recently married. They had help from their parents. They wanted to be in Oakville. They had this whole list of things that they were looking for, and the time just made sense. Both their jobs were very secure. And when they were looking at properties, we started looking at like townhouses, and we've been looking for a while. And then prices have come down so much that they were able to get into a detached.
They skipped both first steps. Usually it's condo to townhouse to detached. So good for them.
So they were able to get that. And basically, what happened during the transaction was, the house was listed at 1.1 million. It's been sitting. It was vacant. Had a bunch of price drops to it. And I said, let's go in 100K under asking. And then we're going to go back and forth, directing them. Because people, if you're hiring an agent, people appreciate the direction. And they agreed. I'm like, this is going to take 3 or 4 days. We're going to go back and forth. And we're going to end up meeting somewhere where I think you guys will be happy. And the sellers... I looked back on Geo Warehouse and saw that they were the original owners. So to them, it was, it wouldn't have made made their life 10x better if they got another, 20 to 50K more. And we got the finance condition.
That's a nice success story.
Yeah, you got the finance condition and the inspection condition, and they were really able to have like the peace of mind of, this is a good decision. So my long story short is who in this market is buying. It's people like that, right? They've been kind of sitting on the sidelines for years because prices got way out of control. And now, with some help from family, they were able to get themselves in a, awesome neighborhood, Westmount in Oakville. And they're able to really like do something they didn't think was possible. Like they're like, we didn't think we'd be able to do this for a long time. So as prices are coming down, more people like the couple that I just helped are getting into the market. And for them, they're seeing what the house would have been worth in 2021 and saying, for me, it's time to get in. I'm not calling the bottom. I even said to them, I think prices, have further to fall. Who knows? But to them, the deal made sense. They had the money down and they're going to do some work to the home over the 5 years where they feel like if they ever need to make a move, which they may not, they may stay there for 10 years. They feel like this was the right time for them. So I guess that's kind of my 2 cents on if you do want to buy or not. Those are the kind of people out there buying.
Yeah, I find that there are some people that are definitely shielded from what's happening in the economy, especially if they do have a secure job and have been saving over the years. I mean, you can get a really good deal right now. I was just working with somebody that is a risk taker and wants to flip a home because you can get an extremely good price right now, whether it's a smart idea, and I'm a flipper, so just to note that, but whether it's a smart idea to buy and then flip it, and it might be a tough sell at the end of it, But there is opportunity, and there are good stories in the market. Like that's a feel good story because the seller's happy and the buyer's happy. And I've noticed over the past 6 months, usually the buyer or the seller, one of them isn't as thrilled as the other, right? Either the buyer had to come up to the seller's price, or the sellers had to come down to the buyer's price, and one of them's happier than the other. So that's a nice story. I find that right now I'm more in as a listing agent than a buyer's agent. I think most realtors find the lack of buyers right now anyways. So as a listing agent, I'm definitely experiencing some crazy offer submissions. So when you were saying that you went 100K under asking, I was almost saying like, yeah, because you're an experienced agent. You're not the type of agent that's going to throw these 300K below asking. And it just doesn't make sense, and it puts a bad taste in the seller's mouths. And you ended up getting a deal done where everybody is happy at the end of it. So just to note a couple of the deals that I've been working on, I've had a couple listings receive offers, and it is tough to get an offer in this market. Let's be realistic. So usually I'm thankful just to receive an offer, even if it is below asking, but I'm finding they're further and further below asking, less than like crazy low balls that are almost offensive. So there definitely is a buyer pool out there that are just trying to get a good deal, and that would be a different type of buyer than the buyers you were just looking for. Some buyers just find an agent that will throw offers 300 to 500K below asking and throwing them out there to a ton of listings and seeing what sticks. And maybe they find one, but I've been pulling my hair out trying to get a deal done, but I'm finding we're just so far apart that it ends up not coming together. And so it's definitely a frustrating market for sellers, especially when buyers are thinking, oh, it's my time, and thinking that every seller is underwater. Well, that's just not the case. Sometimes people are selling for other reasons than it's too expensive to carry, right? There's a sentiment that every seller needs to sell. It's just
and 100%. And this is where experience comes into play, right? Like if you are one of those buyers who is looking for that kind of that deal, that needle in the haystack, you're not going into a house 3 days on the market that, hopefully your agent has called them and said, hey, have they sold yet? Have they bought yet? So they're kind of like forced into selling, or are these people just, testing the market in a sense, right? If you want a deal, you want to look for something that's vacant, something that has had a bunch of price drops. They've been on for 6, 9, 12 months. And that's the best way you are going to find someone who's willing to negotiate off that purchase price. I'm not saying don't try, like go ahead and try, but if it's listed at 1.3 million with 2 days on the market and you're going in at $1 million, it's not going to happen today, right? And also I know we're going to get into it a bit more, but I've started working with a friend of mine. He does a bunch of B lending, and he sent me a few listings for power of sale. So what's basically happening is the person has a loan that they have not paid their interest payments to. So he's forcing the power of sale. So I actually had to go and put like a notice for the tenants on the door. And it's so funny because I would think 5 years ago, I'd have to call a lawyer and pay them to help me kind of write up a notice. And today I just use ChatGPT to help me kind of, just how can I make this as smooth as possible? Here's my number just for showings. Here's what's going on, because they don't understand, right? Like their landlord, they've been paying their rent. Cause I was talking to one of the guys and I was like, I know you've been paying your rent, but your landlord's not paying his mortgage. And he was like, wow, I'm shocked. Like I would never expect
just that. To educate people, what happens to the tenant in that situation if the bank is taking over? Because don't the LTB rules govern kicking out a tenant? Would the bank be able to assume vacant possession if they take the home over from the seller? Like, does the tenant have to leave?
So if the tenant is under a tenancy agreement where, say they're 6 months into the 12 months, then they technically have the right to stay there until the end of their tenancy, even if another owner comes in to play. Right. But if they're month to month and then someone comes in and purchases the place, and they're moving in too, right? So you also have to be like moving into the home. Not that, you want to relist it and try and get more rent and kick them out. I think it's like serious renovation, or you're moving into the home, or a family member's moving into the home. Then the tenant will receive notice that they are going to leave. So what I said to this tenant was, look, you probably have enough time because the market's so slow. You don't have to go look for a new place tomorrow. And maybe your landlord is going to pay off the loan and you can stay. Like, that's a real possibility as well. Because some of these guys think like, oh, I'm just going to push this off. You know, they're not going to force a sale. Now, all of a sudden, I've got, you know, a listing agreement with the lender. I'm putting up a for sale sign. I'm getting photos done. I'm doing all these things. So I have to pay for these photos, but what my buddy will do will be like, well, I'm going to add that expense to the lender if he does pay it out. So it's not on me, because like it would be a hassle for me to go through all this. And he's like, I'm going to add the expense, you know, as you know, an interest payment or an expense that you, because they're doing it, right? It's their fault.
Right.
They aren't paying their mortgage. So yeah, I'm kind of dealing and going through the power of sale process, and it feels like you're almost in the mafia. You're like, you know, you're forcing the sale.
It's a crazy thing to essentially, people are walking away from their homes and just giving up the keys and just walking away from it. So I've had people reach out that are essentially buyers that are on the sidelines that don't necessarily need a house for themselves, but are saying, hey, I would take advantage of a deal in this market if there are any. And what are you seeing in terms of power of sales and quantity of them in today's market? Because obviously there are a lot of people underwater having gone through mortgage renewals. I know there's a lot coming up in 2026, which we'll also talk about. But just for anybody that's listening and interested in, you know, what power of sales mean, or what that could mean for a buyer in terms of potentially getting a good deal, we've put together a list, and I have it up in front of me, which I could share, but I basically what I've done is I've compiled a list of every single power of sale listing in Ontario that is currently up for sale right now. So the benefit to buying a power of sale listing is sometimes and oftentimes the bank takes a hit because they just want to get rid of it. The bank doesn't want to own these homes. They don't want to take care of these homes and actually have the real properties. They want their loan back. And sometimes they're willing to take, you know, 75%, 85% of the loan just to recoup as much as they can and settle on something lower than what they're asking. And of course, with the market being extremely slow, they're in a position where that may be the bank's only choice other than holding it, which banks don't want to do. So there is a shocking amount of power of sales. And it obviously, every single one of those homes has a story to it. So as much as buyers can feel excited that they may get a deal, it also really is a shocking amount. And I look through each of these homes, some of them still have furniture, and it's like every single one of these homes, there is a seller with a story, and where they've gone or how they've moved forward once the bank took ownership, I don't know, but I of course feel for them, and I hope that they're able to recover from
most of the time. It is like, if you see the seller as like a bank, usually that's like a primary residence. And then if you see it as, say, ABC Lending Corporation, usually it's going to be a rental property. And kind of what you want to do in those situations is, as the agent, you want to try to recoup as much money as you can. But also there is a bottom line that all these investors or lenders are willing to take just to get their money back. So having your agent, hopefully it's us, having your agent call the power of sale agent representative, so who's and just, you know, that agent wants to sell the home too, right? Like, they really want to make the commission before the lender pays it back, or, you know, as time goes on, they could come up with the money. So just asking, you know, what does the bank need to be whole on the loan? Just little questions like that. Who cares? Like, you might as well throw it out there. The worst they can say is, I'm not telling you. Because I was having a conversation with a guy today, and I said, because he was trying to go in on a power of sale, and I was like, ask the questions, you know, try and get as much as you can out of them and get the situations.
Yeah, and you can sometimes calculate too, based on what the purchase price was initially. So that's why the banks usually require 20%. I know there's obviously situations where a lesser down payment is required, but 20% is so that if the bank had to force a power of sale, usually the loan amount is only 80% of what that value was. So if things fall 20%, which is substantial, and since the peak we've seen that decrease, the banks are usually comfortable enough lending 80% because that's what the loan is that they need to recuperate. So another thing that the banks have to do, and I've worked with lawyers before that obviously instructed me to put the listing up for market value and not just what the loan is at. So if the loan is at 800 and the sellers had previously bought it for $1 million and maybe you find some comparables around 850, you have to try to get as much as you can because the seller actually would get the profit that's on top of the loan. Now we're in a situation where there really isn't situations I see often where the bank takes over and the seller is actually awarded some profit out of the down payment and the loan being paid in full. It's usually the bank having to settle, but sellers would essentially be walking away from their down payment. So just as an example, a power of sale that I recently worked on, she had to walk away from her down payment. And she was still working. She just couldn't afford her mortgage payment. So we got her a cheaper lease. So we got her a lease, something that she was able to afford. The bank took over. So in that situation, she lost her down payment. The banks are still in a position where they can come after you for the difference. You can be sued. So it's important to know, obviously, when you're buying a house, like you want to be in a position where you have job security and that sort of thing, because there's a bunch of legal issues that could come up with these. But again, back to how many there are in Ontario is staggering. And
It's
I wanted
only
to
increasing.
talk about the renewals in 2026. All of the people that did a 5-year, which a lot of people signed a 5-year mortgage term in 2021 when things were going crazy. This is going to be one of those years that I think we see more of mortgage renewal pain. And I know we've been talking about this for years now, but
I got a
we're
chart.
not at the end. Sorry?
Yeah, I got a chart. I'm going to share it right now, actually. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is from Ben Rabideau. I actually saw him speak last night, which was good.
Oh.
So mortgage renewals by year. So you can see, here's our year in 2026. Look at all the renewals coming up. And like you said, most people are looking at a 5-year term. That was the most popular mortgage back then. Like, why would you not sign a really
Right.
historic low mortgage rate? So again, you're seeing 30% of mortgage renewals coming up are in 2026. So
Yeah.
you are going to have that. It depends how much you have, how much loan you have. And actually, Tom Story did a really good post on this. I'm going to bring that up as well, kind of looking at the numbers a bit deeper. So here's Tom. I just paused his video.
Yeah.
But here it is. So it's mortgage renewal before and after. Before, if you in 2021 at a 2% rate, your monthly payment was $3,393. And then if you had to renew,
What is the value of the loan at that? I guess this is
I
just an example.
yeah, this isn't just an example. I think it was roughly balance after 5 years. It looks like it was about 800,000. So you
Yeah.
had principal paid. So you see how much principal you
Yeah.
paid
Okay.
down at
So,
2%. So
yeah.
you see the principal paid 158,000 and your interest payment is 44,000. So now you're going after. So you're going to sign another 5-year in 2026. Your rate's going to be 3.8% versus the 2%. So you've paid down 158,000, but your new payment is 3810. So it's roughly $417 more per month. But the crazy thing is you look at this higher interest rate and then you look at the principal and the interest. So now you're paying more interest, not a lot more, but sorry, not a lot more than what you're paying principal, but you're paying a lot more than you did at the 2% rate. So what you're going to see is that the earnings are going to be really good for all these banks because now all of a sudden you're making more interest on these loans. Now,
Right.
this right here, you got $417. I think that a lot of people can weather the storm if it's roughly
Yeah.
in this range. The thing that kind of also is where my economy brain goes is now you have households with $417 that they're not spending in the economy. They're not going to restaurants. They got to cut back somewhere, less buying of clothes. So I think you'll see this renewal wave. I don't know if we'll see a lot of forced sellers. We'll see. I think if you had like a mortgage at way too high, say you had a $2 million mortgage, which people do out there, you'll see more forced sellers. And if we continue to see the unemployment rate increase, yes, we're going to see more sellers for sure. Doesn't matter. It's only $400. People won't be able to service their mortgage. But what we're going to see is that trickle down effect in the economy. Less people doing work on their home. No pools are going in. No landscaping's getting done. The local restaurants are probably going to feel it. Like I said, clothing is going to feel it. So anyways, that's kind of
I
my
have
rant there.
just to add on, just basically almost similar to what you were saying, but I have another chart here in front of me that I wanted to show. Can you see that? Are you able to see?
Yeah, no, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, if you look at these two, I guess they're pie graphs. So if you look at the first one, the yellow is our fixed rate with a term of 5 years or more. These are people that signed in 2021. So a significant amount of people will be renewing as of 2026. I believe if you look at this chart, it's around 33.3% will be renewing in 2026. So that's a third of the people that have a mortgage are renewing in 2026. A third of mortgage holders are renewing in 2026. That is a big chunk of people. And then a couple more stats that I have here, if you follow me here. For variable rate, fixed rate mortgages, the range of payments include at the top of the range, 10% of borrowers renewing in 2026 will see an increase of more than 40%. So if your mortgage rate has been $3,000, $2,500, to see an increase of 40%, I think this is where we're going to see a lot of the pain. So in 2021 and 2022, I remember this was offered and a lot of people took this. So they took a variable rate mortgage, but a fixed payment. So that was pretty popular.
They're paying all interest by the time it was done, right?
So usually there was a threshold that if your payment became 100% interest, it hit a trigger rate where that payment needed to change. But this is where we're going to see the pain, is these fixed payment mortgages that were variable rate, because they're going to see an increase of more than 40%.
40%. And they haven't paid down any principal,
and
right?
Zero
They've only
principal.
paid interest. Yeah. So you're looking at basically the same loan that you took with no pay down. And the example that I showed, there's about $150,000 of pay down, which is really good, right? Like that's a really good pay down in 5 years. But I do wonder what we will see this year. I was a little bit more, I think this is going to, kill the real estate market. But seeing kind of Tom's example there, I was like, $400, I think people will be able to weather that storm. They just need to cut back on, I think people spend on average like $120 a month on clothes. They don't even know it, right? So I think, going out it's a quick 200 if you're a couple. Clothing, you're going to cut back on. Some groceries, you're going to probably buy a little bit less if you have to. But it depends how much debt people have. Also, like, property taxes going up. Like, there's still other stuff in your home that you're servicing that has also increased.
Well, it increases year over year. I mean, inflation, even though it's at a normal rate now. I mean, inflation was a huge buzzword for a long time. Now you don't even hear the word inflation, funny enough. But it's at, the normal 2% range that is targeted and expected. So that is still a big jump if your income remains the same. Because less of your income, more of your income is going toward things just getting more expensive over time, and less in your pocket. So if you're experiencing a mortgage increase, whether it's $400 or at the extreme, what I just showed, 40% increase, you're still dealing with inflation, even at 2%. The funny thing is that, yes, it's back down to 2%, but things were inflated over COVID for so long. Remember when it was at 8% for a long time? And that becomes the new benchmark. So now it's growing at 2%, which is good and what we want to see, but it's growing from that new benchmark that was set.
Yeah, from the 8% year over year. Like, it's come down from the 8, but it doesn't mean that the 8 has been erased. It just means that inflation is continuing on that trajectory upwards.
And it always boggles my mind too, because I go to the grocery store and I'm like, how are people affording this?
like having like teenage kids or something like that
Oh
would,
my
you know, that
God.
are growing, it would be, it would be very, very challenging. And I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I'm laughing. I just don't know how people do it.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's more of an awkward laugh.
Yeah, and seeing Doug Ford put out a tweet or an Instagram or something that was saying how much the food banks are struggling this year
Record
compared to
highs.
years. And to be honest, I think that we talked about this around last Christmas, how much the food banks were struggling, but this
Yep.
is even worse than what we saw last year. And I've sponsored a family. I've been encouraging anybody that's in a position to give
To
back,
donate.
to
Yeah.
donate or give to the food bank. They have boxes at the end of most registers at most grocery stores where you can just, put some extra food in that box that'll go to a family in need. But they're definitely experiencing a lot of pressure at these food banks to keep up with how many families are in need. And it's one of the first times that I personally can see how much people are struggling, I think. A lot of times we talked about how much the economy is tough to keep up with. The cost of living in Canada, let's be honest,
It's
it's tough, but I see it firsthand now. And
mm,
it took obviously a long time. And back when things first started changing, when the market changed after 2022, when we saw the initial crash, if you want to call it, you didn't really see it until now. I can personally see how tough it is to keep up. So
how much people are struggling. Yeah. 100%.
anybody
It's
that
like,
obviously is in that position, you're definitely not alone. Anybody I talk to, even in our profession, right? Things have slowed down extremely for us. So like lifestyles need to change, regardless of, if you're in one industry or the other, lifestyles are certainly
yeah.
changing and affected, which
100%. Yeah. I wanted to share this one with you. If you can see that one there with Dan Foch posted it.
Mhm.
So I did not have this in my bingo card either. So as detached homes are the worst performing housing category in November of 2025. 416 condos are the best performing product type in the GTA right now. He said I did not
What?
expect that one. Either did I.
No.
So
Sorry.
Trev just put
Did
up
he just
these
say the
numbers.
condos are best performing
Yeah,
in Toronto?
that's exactly what he said. They're better performing than the detached homes. So you can see, like year over year here, what you're looking at, 8% detached.
Wow.
That's the total. So 905 too. So kind of the area that we work
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So those condos are taking a bigger hit than the city, right? Which makes sense because in the city you have more people moving back to work, and prices have come down from the sky high that they once were.
Yeah.
So I'll be interesting to see what happens there. I've talked about this so many times that what they're building down here has been purpose-built rentals. Like that's what they've been focused on, and there's chart after chart that will show that purpose-built rentals are the sexy thing that builders kind of pivoted into because there was so many incentives to build that purpose-built rentals. So what I was also at the presentation last night, Ben Rabideau, who's a lot smarter than me, what he was talking about was that we have all this rental inventory coming to completion, and then we have a decline in the non-permanent residents and the students who are renters, right? So what we should see is a continual fall, and we're seeing it, but a continuous fall in rental prices.
Oh, I can
Yeah, I'm
personally
sure you
speak on
know.
that.
So I guess what my point here being is that I don't think that investors are going to rush back into this market with declining rents. I think that, we had low rates. It was kind of the sexy thing to do was to buy a condo. And all these investors, when you're running your pro forma, you could just see the rental prices going up, up, and up. So when you
Yeah.
actually ran the numbers, it just completely made sense.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing this record inventory come to the market for rentals. So what investor is going to look at that and say, I'm going to project, you would have to have a really conservative projection on your rentals below market value today, in my opinion, if you were going to buy an investment property, because you would want to kind of have a worst case scenario of what's my monthly cash flow going to be if rent prices continue to fall because population growth is falling, at least for the people and the cohort that come here to rent right away, right? Like most likely you're not getting a non-permanent resident or a temporary foreign worker coming in and spending $800 million on a home.
No, it's right.
So yeah, his kind of projection was seeing rental prices continue to fall. The one thing that he did mention is that we haven't had a influx of building permits happening. So there's no one's building basically in Ontario. Again, this is very Ontario specific, so I apologize to other people in other provinces that are listening. But we should see kind of, we're not having that single family home. So are we going to face another challenge in 7 to 8 years, or will population decline and enough boomers will start selling their homes where we'll see more inventory? Because we do have record inventory kind of coming to the market, or an increase in inventory of detached and semi-detached homes start to, I don't want to say flood the market, but come to the market that we haven't seen in the last sort of 5 years. And one last point, when you look at just to talk about Canada as a whole, all of Canada, the prices are down, the average price of a home, but it's because Ontario's dragging it down mostly. Because Ontario's down so much. You have the prairie provinces that are doing really well. Quebec is doing really, really well. So those markets seem, I don't know what's going on. Maybe people are fleeing to these provinces. I don't know.
Other agents, and especially out in Alberta, he said that he's having a great year. Not to say that like his year speaks for all of Alberta, but he says it's quite busy out there. So it's interesting to compare provinces and see how different we can be from one province to another. And you even see when you're on Twitter and you're scrolling between some people that are living in different provinces, how people know that Ontario is struggling, and they almost like, hey, Ontario, what's happening? All of Canada knows.
Well, I mean, I think a big reason Ontario is struggling is obviously house prices went up the fastest. So, the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So our correction has been quite violent in some areas. Like even Peel region is down 30%. Like that's crazy. Like people don't quite comprehend that. And it's still falling. But also our relationship geographically to the US it's right there. So it's having this kind of trade war, even the fear of it. And we still don't have a deal there. It's
Isn't it crazy? We're in November, or we're in December now.
December, I know. I don't even know the months.
So that's how many months in office we've gone without a deal.
I think they said we were supposed to have a July deal, but a lot of things have gone wrong. Doug Ford put out that campaign, and things just haven't gone our way. I think that there's going to be a point where, I know Algoma Steel just laid off 1,000 people in Sault Ste. Marie. There will just be too much political pressure where Carney will have to get down there and start, talking to Trump again. Because I don't think there's been any talks going forward at all.
No, I haven't.
On that.
I haven't heard any updates regarding that, because I do think that people are just staying put because people don't know what's happening. Realistically, people want to be led, and people want to be able to trust what's happening with their country. So
you like certainty.
You like certainty. So without feeling grounded in your leadership of your country, you're going to stay put. You're going to basically wait to see what happens before you, because realistically, making a move, purchasing a house, unless you're like the clients that you described in the beginning of this episode, it is a risk based on the previous 5 years, what we've seen happen. People don't want to take that risk anymore, knowing that we could see a worse 2026 if we don't get a trade deal, if we don't see maybe a bit more mortgage relief, if we don't see the cost of living kind of come back.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too, and I've just been thinking of this, this migration to other provinces just for housing. I've always kind of thought, wow, that's crazy. Like you're going to pack up your bags and move to another province, but if you don't have a job anymore, right, and you really do want a house, and there's opportunity in other provinces. Like my grandpa was on a boat with my dad, who was 2 years old, from Italy, and came to Canada. Like it's not that crazy to think that like we can't move, or people can't move to another province. Even my mom, she was in her 20s, left Northern Ireland and came to Canada with knowing nobody, and just for opportunity. So I mean, people have done it in the past. I just think that we've kind of thought No, I'd never leave.
Yeah.
It's too crazy. But now it's like, hey, if you have an opportunity to go to another province and house prices are half, and you want a backyard and you want to start having children, and you can service that mortgage, I don't think it's too crazy of an idea anymore at all.
No,
I
I
think that
don't either.
I think in 2026, I really want to watch that trend of people potentially leaving
Migration.
Ontario
Yeah.
and going to other provinces where they can have a backyard or they can afford a home. Yeah, I'm interested to see that. But one thing to note is I have had a lot of clients where they're getting the down payment from their parents. Their parents are
Yeah.
like, this is 100% not made up. It's, we want you to stay here. We want you to be close to us, and you're going to get this money anyway. You might as well have it now while we're alive and we can enjoy it with you. So that is definitely something that's happening. Even
Yeah.
I've sold condos, and that's exactly where the money's coming from. Is that the parents are like, we will give you enough of down payments so you can stop paying the rent, and it'll be very similar to the rent payment. So
Right.
that kind of wealth disparity is already coming down and trickling down to some younger millennials.
Well, if you're renting, it is very tough for, even when we talk about salaries and average salaries and household incomes in Ontario, to pay your rent and save for a down payment is almost,
It
I
is
don't want to
impossible.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, to
it's
lack
like
of
you
a
have to.
better word, just really realistically, paying rent and the cost of living right now and trying to save for a down payment is definitely a much harder task than it would have been 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, even when I first got into the market, like when I first started my career in 2016, sometimes like how Sigma will show me the old sale, and I'll be like, wow, that
Yeah,
was like, you don't even see those numbers anymore. Like
I
what,
know.
even after what we corrected from COVID, like we're still
We're
way
still,
above those
well,
numbers. Yeah.
it's kind of like what we were just saying with inflation. Like even though we've had a crash, it's still not enough to really, well, obviously it hasn't changed, but we slowed down even more year over year. It seems to be getting
Mhm.
even slower, even with mortgage rate relief. The mortgage rates have come down a couple times, and we're expected to see another one. I think we may.
Yeah, yeah. I think you'll have to for sure, based off what kind of the numbers that we're seeing, but it's really going to depend on, we had like a surprise upside to GDP, um, which I thought wouldn't have happened. I have to dive into those numbers though, Frank, to be
Mhm.
frank, and see what they're saying. I don't expect like a crazy increase in GDP in 2026. I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. Like I know the states, they have a December meeting coming up, December 10th, and they are for sure cutting.
Yeah.
I think it's like over 80% on poly market right now, and those prediction markets are
They
insane.
are they're
They're so accurate.
it's like the
Like it's
truth.
crazy. It is the truth. If you
It's
want to
the
know what's
truth.
going to happen
Yeah.
before it
Yeah.
happens, like go to poly market and look whatever event you want up, because it is crazy how accurate they can be. Did you want to finish on Bill 60?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So just another change to um, talk about. Obviously, the landlord tenant board. We've talked about many times on these episodes how backlogged they are, how skewed the system was for tenants and landlords, and obviously people going through disputes over the years. So let me share the new this article about Bill 60. Is I'm sure a lot of people have already heard about it, but just to give a basically summary of what that means if you're a landlord or a tenant. So this is essentially just outlining. I found one that gave us exactly every single point that was passed with Bill 60. We've seen a lot of, I guess, people not happy with these changes and a lot of pushback since the Ontario government approved this bill. What has changed? Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, there are going to be a couple changes happening this year. And as we head into 2026. Number one, ending a lease or evicting a tenant must be done through a form approved by the landlord tenant board. Okay, that one was already, that's interesting because that was already in place. This is a big one. Evictions for non-payment of rent can now be issued 7 days after the non-payment instead of 14. If the landlord is evicting for personal use, they may do so with 120 days notice, and the compensation of 1 month's rent is no longer required. So usually you would have to basically tell your tenants 120 days was standard. So you'd have to give them, that's 4 months notice that a family member or yourself will be moving in. And you would have to compensate those tenants 1 month's rent on top of their last month's rent deposit if you were to give that back if they were to move sooner. That's no longer needed. Tenants must now pay at least 50% of the overdue payments claimed if they wish to raise issues at an eviction hearing. New issues may not be raised at hearings related to non-payment of rent without a prior notice. And
So what does that mean? Like so basically, like say my furnace is broken and my landlord won't fix it. And I go, I'm not paying you the rent because my furnace doesn't work. If you want to have a hearing for the furnace, you have to pay, say your rent is $2,000. I have to give him 1,000 and I'm withholding 1,000 before my hearing because there's something wrong with the home. Is that what that means?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And then, so new issues may not be raised. That one interests me because there's been a lot of people over the years that have actually personally reached out to me and said, hey, this is broken in my home, or something's the heat, or something's happening. I'm not paying my landlord rent until this is fixed. Or they say, well, I'm going to fix it myself and then I'm going to withhold the rent payment and give him the remainder. So
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So I actually probably think that's the best way to do it. I actually give that to my tenants and say, if there's anything wrong with the home, obviously come to me with approval. And there's issues that come up in my houses. There was something to do with my laundry machine, and then it's actually a great way to work things. They fix it and they take it off the rent. I mean, that's fair in my opinion. But of course, landlords sometimes don't take care of their homes and leave tenants in positions where they are without heat or without, what's another issue that comes up a lot that you hear of?
Oh, you could just like a toilet's not working or a faucet's not working or there's a leak or something like that and they're just not taking care of it.
Well, as a landlord, you're required to upkeep your home. Like, come on.
Oh, yeah.
I've started putting in agreements that tenants agree to pay for anything in the unit that is under $300. So if your toilet is plunged and it's plugged and it's not more than $300 to fix, the tenant should take care of that. If something happens where there's a little bit of damage, tenants will pay up to $300. And surprisingly, more tenants than you'd think agree to it, and they say, yeah, no, I understand that. So that takes away from these little things here and there that cause a lot of these issues, because a lot of issues that come up with the LTB are very minor issues like this.
Yeah, they can get resolved for sure. Yeah.
That are just you could just resolve them on your own. So I think what they're trying to do is really speed up the process and put in these new changes that won't bog the system down as much. The last thing is the LTB's ability to delay or overturn evictions will also be regulated. Any request to review their decision must be made within 15 days instead of 30 days. So just to summarize, and let me go back to this. So the benefit for landlords, Bill 60 has made the eviction process smoother and faster for landlords. If tenants are not paying their rent, landlords can now send an eviction notice after 7 days instead of 14. This reduces the financial loss for landlords. Tenants will have to pay upfront costs to defend themselves at hearings. This helps to rebalance the power that has for many years favored tenants and put landlords at a disadvantage when it comes to receiving rent and evicting bad tenants. It will also no longer be required to compensate tenants or offer them another rental unit when they wish to use the unit for themselves or their family. Overall, the new amendments are beneficial to landlords, helping them manage their property and handle tenant issues more effectively. So realistically, Bill 60, and why we're seeing a lot of pushback about Bill 60 is people that are under the impression that homelessness has increased and that landlords have been in a good position for too long and that tenants have gotten the crappier end of the stick, where in my opinion, I found that they actually favored tenants. So that's just my opinion. Maybe I'll hear some pushback to that, but
in these outlier situations, like there's shitty landlords, there's shitty tenants. So for the most part, I would say like 95+% of the market runs fine, but it's these nightmare situations where you have these like professional tenants who know they can get away with it. So I think this is kind of tackling that more than it is tackling the bad landlords.
Yeah, because
But yeah,
like you said, of course, there is bad landlords, but the LTB really favored tenants for quite some time. So this has really changed the, I guess, ability of tenants to just take advantage of the
mhm,
system a little bit. So what
yeah.
tenants should be aware of? Before you didn't have to pay to raise their issues, but now they do. So if you're a tenant and you want to raise an issue, you might have to pay to raise the issue to actually get to a hearing. Um, what else? To address this problem, the new rules make it more difficult for tenants to avoid paying rent and delay the issue until their hearing. Now, for tenants who wish to challenge any non-payment evictions, they must pay half the amount the landlord claims is owed in order to raise their own issues or disputes, such as maintenance or harassment at the hearing. So that's extremely interesting. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of pushback for the people that obviously are either professional tenants or thinking that this could lead to more rich landlords, which,
Yeah, no,
people.
I think it's a step in the right direction for everybody. And I think if anyone is like challenging it, it's just like, look, you just got to pay your rent. And if the
Yeah.
landlord is neglecting their home, then there's
Mhm.
a, like you just stated in there, you just have to pay half the month, and then you're going to get a hearing, and then you're going to be able to prove, with photos, with video, with evidence that your unit has been neglected. So I think overall, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I feel like what it will do. We already have good rental stock, but people will be more incentivized to put their home or their unit for
Up.
rent if they
Yeah.
know that they have a better chance of getting help from the tenant landlord board if they do, by an off outlier chance, get a professionally bad tenant. So I think overall it's a good thing for both, like, good landlords and good tenants. It's bad for bad tenants and bad landlords, right?
Right, right. And
Hmm.
it even states here too, like the idea behind Bill 60 was so to cut the red tape and stimulate the rental market. I mean, a lot of landlords that I know, or I guess investors that I know, kind of want to stay away from renting their home, or even as another example, having some listings that are very quiet in terms of amount of showings that get booked, thinking about other options. Hey, do we want to rent it for a year and potentially try selling it next year if we don't see anything, um, like any offer happening? And I see a lot of people quick to say, I don't want to be a landlord because the LTB has favored tenants so drastically. So I think this was needed despite all of the pushback and potential consequences that could come from it. I mean, people are claiming homelessness is on the rise and this could contribute to it. I think that the Bill 60 is a good thing and will stimulate the rental market.
Hmm. I think so too. I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
I do think it's a good thing. So landlords, less to be scared of if you're looking to rent, I guess. Investors, I mean, if you're looking to potentially buy a rental property, less to be afraid of, because we know, and I know firsthand, some horror stories of having a tenant not pay or trash your house or not pay your rent until a hearing and affect the sale of your house. So this is just putting some more structure in that relationship and making it a little easier for landlords to get answers or to evict tenants that are pulling these games.
These I know I looked over some of it, but it was good to get a refresher on it. That's all I got for this week. I think
Yeah.
we covered a lot of good stuff that you and I are seeing in the market.
Yeah.
We're coming up in December. I think the market is going to come to a crawl. This is when all like the real estate events happen. Everyone's doing like Christmas parties and corporate parties. Good time to get a deal if you're out there looking. I think you'll have a lot less
Definitely.
competition. Try and wrap something up for the new year. But also, if you are a seller, I wouldn't go on the market right now unless you had to.
Yeah,
And
just to interrupt you, if you are a seller, I've heard of many sellers and even some of my sellers that say, hey, take it off for the holidays and put it back up in the new year. I
next year,
understand where
yeah.
that thought process is coming from because theoretically it is the slowest time of the entire year, especially in a very slow market. So to think that your house is going to sell from now until January, probably unlikely. However, if you're getting showings right now, they're serious buyers because
Yeah, they're serious. Yeah, they're not
no,
going out
no
there
one's going
window
out
shop.
-5-degree weather when it's snowing in the cold while the market is this bad if they're not serious of actually wanting to
Mhm.
see your home, and I would hate to see the competition being booked or the off chance that the competing listing sells. So if you're getting showings at all right now, they are serious showings compared to, the spring market, new inventory. Sometimes you get those showings where people are just interested to see, and maybe not so serious. December is a time that showings, the even fewer showings than normal. I mean, if you get a showing, they're more serious than
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
the rest of the year, I do think.
I think so too. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. That was a good episode. 52 minutes went by pretty quick, so that's awesome. If you are thinking about purchasing or selling in the new year, please click the first link down below in the description if you want to support Brooke and I a little bit further. If you're in the GTA, that would be amazing. And if you don't want to buy or sell next year, just like and subscribe, comment down below. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're going to keep going right through Christmas. We're going to do a little predictions episode. And yeah, like we said, we'll have more content coming out, which is amazing. We're also going to get a landing page made for you guys so you can kind of see the services that we do offer. So you can, before you book the call, maybe you're nervous, you can go over what we offer as well. So we're going to get all that up and running pretty soon, and we're really excited. This is a great week, and we hope to see you next time.
Yes, excellent.
All right. See you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.